Issue 1, Contraction Blues.
The U.S. economy in the fourth quarter of last year, 2012, October, November, December, contracted by 0.1%. 0.1%. It was the first contraction in 3 years, and it rattled financial markets. Much of the slippage in gross domestic product, GDP, was due to what the U.S. Federal Reserve described as, quote, weather-related disruptions and other transitory facts, unquote. The central bank is keeping monetary policy on hold and says it will continue to buy long-term securities until there is a substantial improvement in the outlook for the labor market. Also, the cutback in Department of Defense outlay is likely to fuel concern about the size of a slowdown and the full economic fallout of the large, quote-unquote, sequester cuts scheduled for a month from now, the start of March. The President's press secretary said this about the sequester, quote, across-the-board cuts to education, to research and development would have, repeat, would have, damaging effect on our economy and our long-term economic prospects, unquote. A growing number of analysts believe that the political will to stop the sequester is lacking. It will take effect, at least temporarily, they believe, and that will pose a further risk to the economy in the first half of this year.
Question, the Fed is saying that the fourth quarter contraction, October, November, December of 2012, was due chiefly to quote-unquote transitory factors. Is this true, or is the recovery stalling out, Pat Buchanan?
I think basically it's true, John. The U.S. economy is out of the intensive care it was in 2007, 2008, but it's been walking the hospital halls ever since. The growth has been growing at an average of about 2%. Unemployment is where it was when Barack Obama took office. We're adding about 150,000 jobs a month. But John, the real problem here is this slow growth is occurring when we've had 5 straight $1 trillion deficits to pump it up. The Fed has put $3 trillion into the economy, and we get $85 billion a month in transfusions into the economy from the Fed, and we're still limping along like a mature and, quite frankly, modest economy.
Hello.
Well, I think these numbers reflect the fact that government is shrinking, and the Defense Department really pulled back in the last quarter of last year. And so it's a cautionary sign if they do go ahead with the sequester, and it looks like both parties are kind of sleepwalking their way towards the sequester. The Republicans don't want to give up anything on the revenue side. They'd rather take the hit in defense spending than give up any tax cuts. And the Democrats have protected Social Security and Pell Grants and Medicaid, and so they're not going to cave first. And so if neither party blinks, the sequester will go ahead and we'll see further contraction in the economy. But, you know, I'm not that gloomy. I take my cue from Mark Zandi, not Pat Buchanan. And
Mark Zandi?
Mark Zandi is an accomplished economist, and he's saying in 2013 we're going to basically go along with sort of steady, modest growth, but the housing market is truly coming back, and 2014 looks like it's going to be.
Tell Mark Zandi the consumer confidence dropped from 58.6% to 58.6%.
Well, they just lost their payroll tax cut.
8.1% decline December to January.
They just lost their payroll tax cut. No wonder.
I think you have to look at the big picture here, and the job numbers that came out Friday were encouraging. But even business experts were looking at the big picture and seeing that the economy is still in job growth has been terribly sluggish, and it's been terribly sluggish for a really long time. We're still hovering around 8% unemployment. When is this going to end? And no one sees it ending soon, and that's bad news overall.
What do you think, Mark?
Well, I think the economy remains weak at very best. You have, as Pat was saying, you look at this economy in the context of the biggest fiscal stimulus we've ever had in our history, $25 billion a week in terms of a deficit spending trying to goose up the economy. Secondly, $85 billion a month coming out of the Federal Reserve, the loosest monetary policy we've ever had. We can barely get the economy to grow. Here it's been going down. It was 2.4% last year, then 1.8%, if that, maybe even less, 1.8% this year, despite all of this stimulus. So the economy is continuing to slow. It's not even staying flat.
So you're saying that we're in for several quarters of low growth.
this?
Well, we don't know. We hope it is going to be several quarters of low growth. Anything can happen in an economy this fragile
We're heading
that could
for
turn it into a
systemic
recession
change.
and a contraction of GDP.
That would be a double
Al
dip
Qaeda's
recession.
trying
That's right, it would be.
systemic change.
Is that your prediction?
No, I don't know. All I can say
I know you
nobody
don't
knows.
know. Well, where do you think the
I
odds
think
are?
the economy is going to stay very weak, and if there is any single event, the collapse of the Spanish banking system or what have you, anything of a single event will create such a lack of confidence in the economy that you'll have a big cutback.
You
I'd
think
just
we
like
should
to
have
inter-
confidence in what the Federal Reserve is saying in view of what it said in 2007?
No.
Shall I review that history with you?
You can, by all means.
Recently released Fed minutes show how wrong the entire Federal Reserve was in 2007 about the depth of the crisis. They thought it was only a blip in the subprime mortgage markets. They could easily be wrong now, in which case we are actually entering a double-dip recession.
That's right. There is, I think there's at least a 50-50 chance that we're going to end up with a double-dip recession. That is, you'll have at least 1 quarter, maybe 2 quarters of
come out of it.
decline in GDP.
I wish I had a nickel for every time you projected a double dip recession on this show over the last 2 years. It hasn't occurred.
Maybe
I don't-
it's keeping
it's
it
not
away.
gonna- Okay, all right. It's like carrying
It
an
never did
umbrella
come
when,
out
it
of
rains, when it's not raining. I got it. Thanks.
Your numbers
It
have
is
been
what we
wrong.
are experiencing, as the Fed says, a contraction, or is it something
numbers-
longer lasting and more serious?
The numbers
that
are
we can
always
get on?
I
false.
think there's a
Breaking
possibility. We're in
3,
something
4.
of a contraction. We just went through it. I think we're in a permanent period of growth. It's
We
about
never did come out of the
2% or something like
recession.
that. The old dynamism we
And it's
used
a
to get
depression,
after
not a
the Reagan
contraction.
or
It's
the
a
Carter
depression
recession,
in
that-
the
that has never
What
come
could
back.
economic
It
growth.
is
What could goose the slow
Make it
growth?
sound
There's
so
nothing
nice.
that
Oh,
can
it's a
do that if the
contraction.
Fed is
It's a
$85 billion
depression.
a month.
And we never come out of a
reading that in.
recession. And
$5
the recession
trillion
was made
$5
worse.
straight $trillion deficit and we're 2%.
Played la-di-da with your
Lord
numbers.
King,
The only thing that's propping up the
where
United
are
States
you, Lord
stock
King, now that
market
we need you?
is
I
the
have
federal
a lot more
government.
confidence in American ingenuity. I saw before Silicon Valley erupted and before the internet came on the scene. Pat had his gloom and doom then. Something will happen. It might be in the energy field.
What about the
Susan in here.
We're just,
arteries
What do you
going
think
through
and
your
why?
yeah,
skull?
we're sort of creeping toward a decline, as Pat was saying. We're not in a double dip recession. We're always so vulnerable. It'll just take one big event
The
to
same
knock us
people
into
that
that double
have
dip.
arteries
And,
going
you know,
up your
look
spine
at the real
through your
unemployment rate, which is
skull
supposedly
and back
around
down
11%.
through it.
If you were to use the numbers of people who really need a job,
Are the
not
same
just those who
people
are really
that bombed
participating.
the World Trade
Yeah,
Center.
and that's a
Real
real
numbers.
picture of what's happening.
confidence?
Consumer confidence has dropped, and one of the reasons it's dropped, by the way, is that there's been a huge evaporation of wealth for the average American family. Their single largest asset was their home equity. That's down 40 to 50%. Nobody's getting increases in wages. A lot of people are being let out. It's no wonder that people are on
Payroll taxes gone up.
Payroll
Yes.
taxes have gone up.
Have tax rates generally gone up?
Yes.
No, I
Capital
don't think-
gains are up.
Only for a couple of people.
No, only for
Yeah, exports are weak, but they have held up reasonably.
We're better off
trade
than
deficits-
Europe. We're much better off
Yeah,
than
for
Europe.
now.
For now, worldwide slowdown,
Yeah, you can-
we're actually doing pretty damn
Okay,
well.
what about the imbalance with China?
The trade imbalance will be an all-time record last year, John, when the figures come out in February.
The answer is it's too close to call. Issue 2, Heat over Hagel. Commander-in-Chief Barack Obama has nominated Chuck Hagel for Secretary of Defense. Hagel testified before the Senate Armed Services Committee this week. Here's Senator John McCain grilling Hagel about Hagel's opposition to the surge in Iraq in 2007.
Are you correct in your assessment?
Well, I would defer to the judgment of history to sort that out, but
The committee deserves your judgment as to whether you were right or wrong about the surge.
I'll explain why I made those comments. And
I want to
the
know if
reason I
you were
had
right or wrong. That's a direct question. I expect a direct answer.
Senator Hagel explained that he opposed the surge in Iraq because it cost nearly 1,200 American lives.
I saw the consequences and the suffering and the horror of war. So I did question a surge. I always ask the question, is this going to be worth the sacrifice? Because there will be sacrifice.
That was Hagel's emphasis on the cost factor. My question is, did his emphasis on the cost factor in military decisions serve as a dodge to Senator McCain's bullet? Or did he mean this completely from the heart? And if he did mean it completely from the heart, isn't he exactly the man we want over at the Department of Defense? The cost factor.
He was talking about the cost of lives.
That's correct.
And I think in that exchange that you showed, John McCain indicated how personal the surge is to him. He wants us to forget what folly the invasion of Iraq is and just concentrate on what he considers the success
How
of
do
the
you
surge.
know that?
And
Are
to
you
proudly-
denying that about
was kind of
McCain?
cruel.
Or did you see evidence of
I
that?
am listening to him. He wants it to be all about the surge. And Senator Hagel is correctly recalling what a disaster the invasion of Iraq was, and he's not going to sit there and defend one element of the tactic, the surge, which allowed us to get out with our heads
The
somewhat
surge,
held
John,
high.
saved the United States from a disastrous defeat in 2006. I supported the surge, but Hagel was right in this sense. The surge saved us from a defeat in a war we should have never fought. We attacked Iraq. Why? To deprive it of weapons it did not have. We invaded, occupied. The war was the disaster. The war was the worst blunder since Vietnam.
Was McCain really trying to find out how the judgment
Turned into a
of this
boxing ring.
candidate to be Secretary of Defense works and has worked, and whether he has the judgment to have this so important job where you're sending people in to lose their lives potentially?
We want the Secretary of Defense to want to defend our country, and that's what we were doing over in Iraq. And that's what the surge was about too, ultimately. And it was deemed a success, and
Nuclear
McCain said
question.
to Hagel, you're on the wrong side of history. On this one, I think McCain is right on that
fine, he has
point,
hearts,
regardless of
look
whether
out.
we get into the war legitimately or not. Hagel's overall
Lives
problem,
of
though,
our
with that hearing wasn't just that exchange with
volunteers.
McCain. By the end of the day,
They signed
people had
a
almost
dotted
forgotten about that
line.
exchange with McCain because he had stumbled and really floundered throughout that hearing over even basic questions about the military. At one point, he did tell, well, on our stance on containment in Iran, he didn't know
What did he say
basic
about
questions.
that?
He talked about it as though we weren't containment versus
Whereas,
prevention.
yeah,
Very
whereas with
important
a nuclear
point.
weapon, our policy, Obama's policy
Is to prevent
will
it,
prevent a
not
nuclear
just
weapon,
contain it.
and we will not adopt
He
the
didn't know
policy of
this. At
containment.
one point he said, if I am nominated, if I am cleared through Congress and I become the next Secretary of Defense, I will learn and know a lot more about this. That's not what you want to hear from the upcoming Secretary
He
of
came
Defense.
across as
You want to
someone...
know already before they get in. You want to have some sense of expertise about the job and some real desire for it. I didn't really sense that.
Well, can't he be...
Learn on the job?
No, I think his judgment is whether or not whether he has a doctrinaire command of the data like Buchanan every week. What does that mean?
You want to sound, comparing to John Kerry's hearing days earlier. Again, a Democrat, a liberal, he impressed
been sitting over the facts and figure
confirmed
stuff
in
for
hearing and on the floor in one day. But
Susan is right to the extent he came across as someone who has not played at this level of the game for the last several years. He's been teaching at Georgetown. But I think his overall posture on all these issues is right in line with the president. And he's not going to be creating policy at the Defense Department. He's going to be carrying out. And his job was not to appear the smartest one in the room. It was to get nominated. He didn't give them any. He didn't take the bait. He didn't give them a headline. It's going to get confirmed.
I disagree.
You're going to run the intercostals in your...
Well, I don't want to characterize it. I don't want to prejudice your judgment as though I
Want
could
a
do that.
schmuck in there.
But there was some talk about Hegel being vagrantly or really anti-Semitic. What was that?
I don't know about that.
Let me
There
tell
is
you
some
about it.
run
Red
the
Stevens of the Wall Street Journal. I hope I've got that man right.
You got that guy right.
Huh?
You got him right.
Okay, you kind of suggested that by reason of what?
I think there have been a whole host of statements by the incoming Secretary of Defense that were perceived as being, shall we say, hostile to Israel
Why?
and not supportive of
He
Israel.
was talking about
And-
AIPAC's activity in the United States
That's one
Congress.
of the, and they call
And he says the Jewish what? Lobby.
That's right.
And that's supposed to be a bad way to characterize AIPAC?
No, it isn't a bad way, but it was not meant in a positive way, the way he
All right,
put it,
sure.
because
Now,
he said it prompted the Congress to do a lot of stupid things. And somebody challenged him and said, tell us what stupid things we did.
Let me tell you how he cleared this this charge, if that's what it is, this rap.
Yeah.
Charles Schumer did what? He showed him around. He escorted him. And Charles Schumer and he met, Hagel met, before that happened.
That's right.
Now you know Charles Schumer.
I do very
Now
well.
would Charles Charles Schumer function as negating anything about the anti-Semitic business, and that's rap phony, and that's probably phony rap.
Pat's already laughing because he knows that I've got a
Look,
difficult
he's not
answer.
anti-Semitic,
What's
John.
your list?
He's a
not-
critic
he's
of
not
Israel,
anti-
and he's a
Why
critic of the
would
Israeli lobby.
Schumer escort him around?
Schumer is the deputy leader of the Democrats in the Senate.
Yes.
This is his job, okay?
Oh,
And I certainly understand.
Someone who's
Well,
applying for the
his
job.
endorsement matters.
His job.
His
You want
endorsement
to
matters.
tell me something we don't know about what Schumer thinks about Hegel?
No, I don't. I've
Endorse
never
him.
talked to him.
Endorse him.
I've never talked to Schumer.
Schumer is
about-
convinced he is not
You think, I still
anti-Semitic.
don't think
Cut
Schumer
it
would
out.
have escorted him the way he did.
Exactly.
Especially the pleasantries that obviously
He doesn't believe.
I'm really shocked to find
John.
out that kind of language used by people who aren't totally sincere.
John, Schumer does not believe the man is anti-Semitic. He is a critic of Israel. He's been a critic of the Israeli lobby, and he used the wrong term when he called it the Jewish lobby.
There is no doubt, I'm telling this to the group, that
Chuck Schumer,
Chuck Schumer, not Chuck Schumer,
Chuck Hagel.
Chuck Hagel will be confirmed by the United States Senate. No doubt. We're all
I would-
agreeing
I would-
on it. Even you.
I would say
Even you?
70%.
Wait a minute.
I think there is a doubt, because they need 5 Republicans to clear.
I don't think they'll filibuster.
And well, if someone filibusters,
But I think the Democrats, he had a rough hearing, John. I like him.
Oh, he had a rough hearing.
So,
He had a rough
it's not
hearing.
100%.
He's teaching at Georgetown. He's not
He
preparing
did
for the
not.
hearing.
He did not do as well
He
as
said
I hope
it
he
was
did.
a
And I'm a
terrorist.
Schumer guy.
It's not
Excuse me, I'm a Hagel guy.
He said it is a
Updating immigration.
The politics on this issue have been turned upside down. For the first time ever, there's more political risk in opposing immigration reform than in supporting it.
There was a mighty political push this week for changing U.S. immigration law with a bipartisan group of senators dubbed the Gang of Eight on Monday proposing a major overhaul. Along with Democrat Chuck Schumer, New York, the Senate plan is backed by Democrats Robert Menendez, New Jersey, Dick Durbin, Illinois, Michael Bennet, Colorado, Republicans John McCain, Arizona, Marco Rubio, Florida, Lindsey Graham, South Carolina, Jeff Flake, Arizona. Some detail. First, beef up border security. More agents, more drones. 2. Entry-exit system to track visas of temporary visitors to make sure they exit. Then for the 11 million illegal immigrants already here, a change to get quote-unquote probationary legal status. That's if they come forward and successfully, 1, pass background checks, 2, pay fines and owe taxes, 3, learn English and U.S. civics. These temporarily legal citizens can then apply for full citizenship. There are also new fines and penalties against employers who knowingly hire illegal workers. 5 years ago in 2007, Republicans defeated a similar plan. But John McCain says this time may be different. The Hispanic vote is needed and Republicans don't have it.
You look at the demographics of this country and the rising Hispanic population, we're not going to win races. Times have changed, Americans have changed, elections have changed. And I'm not saying it's going to be easy, and I'm not saying we're going to succeed this time, but I think the chances are better than they've ever been.
President Obama is also determined to see major immigration reform.
We need Congress to act on a comprehensive approach that finally deals with the 11 million undocumented immigrants who are in the country right now.
Question, how likely is it that immigration reform will pass this year? We have one question and one answer each. Pat Buchanan.
The path to citizenship, in my judgment, is going to fail. It will certainly be stopped in the House, and I think Marco Rubio, who's gotten himself out front on it, will be badly damaged because I think there's going to be a rising populist reaction to this proposal. No, the path to citizenship will not.
It'll pass the Senate probably with 70+ votes, and then the House is problematical for the very reasons that Pat just outlined. Republicans don't like giving the undocumented immigrants a path to citizenship, and if they block that, Democrats have a hell of an issue going into 2014 midterm elections.
I never thought you'd use that language.
P-L-L-U-D-A.
Only a weakened version of what we just saw can get through because of the amnesty issue. It's an amnesty issue, and it just isn't going to work. Maybe it'll sell at the Senate, even there may be some problems, but you get it over to the House, and you've got a big faction of folks here that's not going to tolerate that kind of thing. I know I've talked to them. No, they don't like to use that word, but we'll start hearing about it.
We don't have to use that.
But for us,
I'm not.
It is amnesty. It's amnesty to people who, it's amnesty to people who will be voting on in the House.
We don't have to use that designation.
But we believe the bill will pass both the Senate and the House, particularly with Patrick support.
I agree with that, and I agree that Rubio has not been hurt at all. In fact, he could be a rising star. Egypt on the edge.
State of emergency. That's what Egypt's President Mohamed Morsi announced this
Are we
week.
giving him tanks so
Plus
that
a
he can kill his
tribute to
people?
curtail violent
We're going to give him tanks and airplanes so he can use it on them?
At least 54 people have died. Another warning came from the country's army chief, Abdel Fattah al-Sisi,
biography.
that Egypt's political strife is pushing the country to the quote-unquote collapse of the state, particularly the near anarchy in 3 cities along the Suez Canal. And in Cairo, a mob ransacked the historic 5-star Intercontinental Hotel. It's been 2 years since the Arab Spring swept Hosni Mubarak from power. The new president, Mohamed Morsi, wrested power from the military 5 months ago. Morsi is an Islamist who is aligned with the Muslim Brotherhood. He is accused of rushing a vote on an Islamist-backed constitution in December. Adding to the unrest is Egypt's weak economy. Egypt's credit rating was downgraded from a B+ to a B this week by the global rating agency Fitch, which cited instability. The urgency of Egypt's climate brought leaders of all political stripes on Thursday to a rare meeting. Included in the talks were representatives from the Muslim Brotherhood, the ultra-conservative Salafis, and secular and liberal factions, including Mohammed el-Baradei and his National Liberation Front. The group issued a statement calling for a national dialogue, one that, quote, all the components of the Egyptian society participate without any exclusion, unquote, as, quote, the only means to resolve any problems or disagreements, unquote.
Question, has Egyptian President Morsi overplayed his hand?
Well, he's certainly at the borderline of overplaying his hand. He's losing a lot of support. The country is in terrible shape economically. The even more extreme zealots in that country are now opposed to him. He has lost the center. He's got real problems in maintaining his position. I don't think the Egyptian army has yet sort of made clear where they're going to come out in all of this, because that is going to be the determining factor in force. Who comes out ahead, and he will only survive if the army stays with him.
That's exactly right, John, but the Muslim Brotherhood is really losing support, and the Salafis, the hard right guys,
against Salafis?
The Salafi Muslims are getting together with the Tahrir Square gang, but it's unnatural lines. And the military guys have said, look, we're in real danger of having a collapse of the state, and that's why I agree the United States should maintain its lines to the Egyptian military, send them the jets, because they may wind up as the guys on top in the primary country in the Arab world.
Really? What about the role that Egypt played in the...
It's not sending jets anyhow. It's not like you're sending them money. It's sending them money.
Palestinians...
The Gaza war, they played a positive role in many ways.
Morsi's role there.
Straight 3, 4. It's not like we're sending a shipment of jets over there. We're giving them money. We're giving money to Morsi. We're not giving it to the military. We're giving it to the political organization that runs Egypt. We're giving billions of dollars to the organization that runs Egypt to buy jets from us. We're giving them money and permission to buy jets.
$2 billion a year. We're also giving them, apparently giving them
and
beautiful bomb.
Will they use them against their own people? First of all, will they buy the jets and tanks after they receive the money? Second of all, if they do buy the jets and tanks, will they use them against their own people?
No. they understand that the Army is the basis of American support in that country.
False position. The Keystone Pipeline will be approved by President Obama. Yes or no?
Yes, they solved the Nebraska problem.
Right, I agree. The State Department will give the go-ahead.
Yes,
extraordinary.
and it's a big deal. All the remembering and saluting. Ed Cox, former mayor of New York, an occasional guest panelist on the group. Our thoughts and prayers are with his loved ones. May Ed rest in peace. Bye-bye.
Enormously helpful to me as I think through these issues. John Hess, who was my chief of staff in Congress, aka the asylum, for the last decade, and Johanna Kornblatt, a recent hire with extensive national security experience. At any rate, I am keeping you indoors, although this is a beautiful space, and I'm sure many of you would like to get through this, have a glass of wine, and peer outside. Springtime in March.
The first technology of its kind is now providing answers families need. Siemens.
Let me just dive in. In
We believe
2005,
that if
while serving
love
as the
is a
senior
chemical
Democrat on the
reaction,
House Intelligence
chemistry
Committee,
has a good chance to make the world a more harmonious place.
I spoke at
Chemistry works
Georgetown
so
Law
that
School,
bandages
where
end up
decades
loving
before
the
I had been
water.
an adjunct professor, by the way,
Families
on
are
the
less
topic
afraid
of
of energy
intelligence
bills.
gathering
And
in
even
the
cars
fog
and
of
clean
law.
air get along
Apologies
better.
to General
That's
Clausewitz
why we don't
and his
just make
famous term
chemicals,
fog of the war,
we create
but the
chemistry.
association
The
was
ASF,
deliberate.
the chemical.
In that lecture, I decried the inability of Congress and the executive branch to debate fully